Hey yo, Fro Wrestling Podcast listeners, help us out and click subscribe to show your support. This is the first week, and I can't even tell you how many weeks we are actually going live at 9:05 on a Saturday night. Hopefully this will get to be our regular routine again, the way it used to be. But tonight we are back at our normal time slot. We got a whole lot of things going on. Tons of news to get to. We have the winner of our greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time tournament has been crowned. I will announce that winner during this show. And I have a huge announcement for all the listeners of the podcast. I have been able to acquire the opportunity to have a great sit-down interview on the phone with Mr. Donovan Dijak, former Ring of Honor star, rumored to be headed to World Wrestling Entertainment. We have to wait and see. We'll address that question during the interview. The interview was recorded this past Monday. It's taken a little longer than I'd like to just make sure I have the time to sit down and really put it all together for you guys. What a great guy. I can't wait for you guys to hear that episode. I will get that up to you in the coming days, but that was very exciting. Probably the coolest interview I've had with anybody so far. Very open, very honest. And you know the part that's really great for me, kind of sucks for everybody else, is just as soon as we were done recording, like, he just had so much stuff to elaborate on, but he can't elaborate on it on the air because of his possible status with World Wrestling Entertainment. So I hope everybody understands that during that interview, I will ask him about it. And you'll hear his exact response to my question. And then we'll talk about his career and all the highlights and things to expect and things like that. And for my younger listeners out there, as many people know, I originally started this podcast for my younger listeners. We're going to address some of the questions you guys have sent me. And I'm always thankful for the younger people who send me the questions. If you're still thinking about wrestling as something to do for a profession, he sheds a lot of light on what you can expect, things you should plan for. So it's going to be a cool interview, and I can't wait to get that up for you guys. One of the more exciting things that I've had go on since I've been doing this podcast. So I'm very excited to get that up there, and hopefully sooner than later so you guys can hear it. Before I forget, if you are a Facebook user, by all means, make sure, if you're sick and tired of paying $60 to $100 for a new game every year, don't do it anymore. Go on to Wrestler Unstoppable on Facebook. You can create your own wrestler, fully customizable, join companies, sign contracts, get involved in storylines, sign up for tournaments, pay-per-views, you name it, they've got it. They've even got trash talk section where it's very cool. Hire a manager. There's all kinds of craziness you can do in that game. If you have not played the game before, check it out. I myself have owned the game. If you play the game, search up Odin Maximus. That's my wrestler's name on the game. I'd be more than happy to bring you into my corporation in the game. I'll send you a big contract if you let me know you're a Pro Wrestling Podcast listener. So, and while we're at it, if you want to become a Patreon member of the Pro Wrestling Podcast, we would love to have you as a part of our Patreon family. Special thanks as always to our buddy Howard in St. Louis. Howard, our #1 pioneer of our Patreon page. Thank you, Howard, for all your contributions. Always great to hear from you. And we are loving anybody who would like to get involved in the Patreon page. I want to get going with all the news. Before I start with any of the news and rumors in the world of professional wrestling, the big announcement. The final round of the Intercontinental Tournament. You guys did such an amazing job of determining who was going to go against who was going to defeat who. And when I'm looking at your results, what I do when I see your results, I don't look all week. And then when I tune in, I try to envision in my mind what the storyline would have been in each moment. So I might get a little bit of a different experience maybe than some other people do. But it's so cool for me to think about what they could have done fantasy booking wise to make some of these matches come true. So for those who did not cast their vote, I will tell you our final match came down to Bret the Hitman Hart taking on the Macho Man, Randy Savage, in the final. I don't know if we could have asked for a better final. I know there was some conjecture and debate on some of the Facebook groups that I put the podcast up on. Some people were really frustrated that Bret Hart got there or that Randy Savage got there, and, you know, none of the greatest, longest, or most reigning Intercontinental Champions made it to the finals or anything like that, and I get that. But when I looked at these two individuals, the reason I'm completely okay with those two being in the final was that Bret Hart, when he was Intercontinental Champion, it was the thing that took him away from being a tag team wrestler and strategically positioned him to one day be the World Heavyweight Champion. And when it comes to the Macho Man Randy Savage, somebody gave me a really tough time on one of the comments about how could the Macho Man be one of the greatest of all time when the Honky Tonk Man held the title for so much longer. First off, we all know that this stuff is planned ahead of time. They determine when you are going to win and lose a championship. But above and beyond that, I think sometimes people forget that the Macho Man Randy Savage had a huge reign with the Intercontinental Championship, winning the championship from Tito Santana in the Boston Garden, and eventually losing it at WrestleMania to Ricky the Dragon Steamboat at WrestleMania 3 in the Pontiac Silverdome, what many people consider to be the greatest wrestling match in the history of professional wrestling. But I always have believed that the reason they took that Intercontinental Championship off of Randy Savage, I know some people think it was just so they could transition it to Butch Reed a month later, then he no-showed and the Honky Tonk Man got thrown in there anyways. But their bigger picture there is the Macho Man was using the Intercontinental title for Vince to try him out in markets and see if he was a big enough star to one day be the World Heavyweight Champion. And if you lose the championship at WrestleMania 3, one short year later, WrestleMania 4, Macho Man Randy Savage becomes the WWF World Heavyweight Champion. Let me explain it for people who really think I'm nuts for this. Hulk Hogan was the be-all, end-all of the WWF World Championship in the 80s. Okay? So for anyone else to carry that belt, now, somebody said, yeah, but Andre beat him. Yeah, he beat him for like 30 seconds before Jack Tunney claimed that his selling the title was surrendering the championship. So from January 23rd, 1984, when Hulk Hogan won the title from the Sheik in Madison Square Garden, all the way until Randy Savage wins the championship in March of gosh, got to do my math on the years, 1988, the championship essentially was monopolized by Hulk Hogan. So, that being said, for someone like the Macho Man to get the title, it's a huge, huge accomplishment. It shows Vince having the faith that he could carry the championship. Now, I understand Hulk Hogan won it a year later, but that even furthers the process because Hulk Hogan started to monopolize that belt again until he went away. Eventually, Macho Man would get the championship back again and had another, not a long reign, but he had a meaningful reign, winning the championship from Ric Flair and then losing it back to him at SummerSlam that year. So, in my opinion, these two guys going into the final very much qualified. Bret Hart, 5-6 times, whatever it was, he held the WWE Championship. Randy Savage holding it twice. They both held WCW World titles. So this championship, running with the Intercontinental title, always known as being the championship that the best actual wrestlers had, I thought it came down to two people that I have no problem with. So, all that sidebars and tangents being said, the winner of the tournament is the Macho Man, Randy Savage, getting 77% of the vote. Huge win for Randy Savage, very deserving. Thank you to all the people who took the time to vote. What an awesome tournament. We took this from every single Intercontinental Champion that has ever been. And the funny part is, in this modern day and age where the championships change hands all the time, now no Intercontinental Championship reign ended and began during the tournament. So I could still say we had everybody in there. If Jason Jordan would have won the title at SummerSlam, it would have thrown the whole matrix off because he may have, knocked somebody else out or done something or whatever. So I'm kind of glad that The Miz held the title throughout our entire tournament. I will be getting a new tournament together for you guys soon. I don't know when. I always got people like, when's it coming? When's it coming? I'm not sure. But I will get it to you guys as soon as I possibly can. I love the fact that it seems to be the one thing that everybody really likes is these tournaments. We've done the greatest world champion of all time tournament. We've done tag team of all time. We've done best Intercontinental Champion. I have been given some suggestions for other tournaments. I will definitely choose one of those and go with it. And I'm leaning one direction, but I'm not going to announce that right now because I don't want to take the thunder away from this tournament. What a great, great tournament. As we go through the show, feel free to call into the Pro Wrestling Sound Off line at 267-642-1160. Give us your questions, your comments, any feedback you'd like to give us. I'm always open to hearing as much as I can from you guys because I feel like your guys' input is so important in helping me create what it is that we talk about and the things that we're passionate about. I know Harold and I have had great conversations this week. John, another one of my great listeners out in Hatfield, Pennsylvania, also having a great conversations this week. And several people have been sending me questions and comments. I call those two up by name. Harold, because he's my inaugural Patreon, and John is such a great guy. I've met him personally, but they're the two that give me their actual name. So I know a few episodes back I stopped doing the whole Barry, Harry, Larry's the one guy I'll still say that funky name, but I prefer to put out people's real name because you deserve recognition for contributing so much to the show. So thank you to those guys. If you have not already, shoot over to our webpage at some point, frowrestling.com. It is where you can see all the topics that will be coming up on the next episode that we record. I leave those up there for a few days till I get ready to record the next episode. So in case you tune in to our webpage, you can go down the list and see if there's something you're interested in hearing about. And if that's the case, then you really want to tune into that episode and hear what we're going to talk about. So I'm going to get going with the actual news. The big one that, when you pull up this episode on Spreaker or whatever service you use, and the headline is Nikki Bella spoils the beans on the futures of Daniel Bryan and the Bella twins. The reason I felt this was the most important tidbit of news this week is that she does not offer any kind of consolation prize here. It's very clear. Daniel Bryan is right now training for an in-ring return to wrestling. Now, we already know that he's on the do not touch list in WWE. His contract runs out September of next year. So once that happens, he'll be free to sign with anybody he chooses. I firmly believe that New Japan Pro Wrestling is probably at the top of his list. I would not be surprised to see him go there. And I think, he's made it clear himself in the past. He can't compete on a full-time schedule anymore. But the beautiful thing about New Japan is you don't have to. New Japan puts on full-time shows, they put on part-time shows, they have special events throughout the year, and he'd be a great asset for them on those shows. So I fully believe that that's something that he may target. Otherwise, a return to Ring of Honor is certainly not out of the question. The way Global Force Wrestling tapes their shows months in advance, that you've heard me complain about, same thing with Lucha Underground, those clearly don't offer the same schedule requirements that other corporations would. So he's got a lot of choices next year if he decides to go ahead and give this wrestling thing another go. Obviously, he doesn't want to do anything that could potentially harm him in a way that's going to impact his relationship with his wife and his child. But I think with all the medical testing he's had done and all the positives he's heard from people about how he has recovered and he's got a fully functioning mind and he doesn't have the post-concussion syndrome or any of the kinds of things that you need to worry about, I think it's exciting the possibilities for Daniel Bryan coming up soon. In addition, Nikki Bella made it clear her neck is not fully healed correctly. She made a very, very surprising statement, if you ask me, stating that her doctor does not want her to ever make a return to the ring, but that she's going to anyways. But she's going to hold off on making a return until her sister Brie can come back with her. She said it's been roughly 2 years since she and Brie have been together in the ring, and that's what she wants. She wants to get in the ring in 2018 with Brie Bella and bring the Bella twins back to wrestling prominence. And I think that would be a great thing to have happen probably in the neighborhood of WrestleMania season. So if I was a betting man, that is when I think they will target to bring the Bella twins back to television. Speaking of things for WrestleMania, Triple H this week, he was on ESPN First Take and he had very interesting comments about Ronda Rousey. I know that, when you go to the negotiating table and you're trying to lock down a deal, they always tell you not to play your cards. You want to keep things close so that you can try to manipulate the person you're bringing to a contract into the most lucrative deal for your side as possible. Triple H is breaking all those rules. He's made it very clear. WWE is willing to pay whatever it takes to get Ronda Rousey in a ring, and he is still trying very hard to bring her to WWE. It's really more a question of, is she willing to make that career change? Is she really ready to step away from UFC for good, probably, and make a jump into World Wrestling Entertainment, where she would immediately be a top draw for their women's division, a division that a year ago we were raving about, and now a year later we're kind of pulling back from just a little bit because of the lack of creativity. So I'll be very interested to see if Ronda Rousey makes the decision to go ahead with Triple H's offer and make a move to World Wrestling Entertainment. One of the things I found incredibly interesting this week, Hulk Hogan in the news. So Hulk Hogan held his first ever Q&A session, and he held it from his beach place that he has, beach shop or whatever they call it. and he was taking questions from fans. Now, I find it a little hokey because the fans that he was taking questions from, it looked like this episode was very much edited. They had every person who asked him a question was like standing in front of a ton of Hulk Hogan memorabilia. Clearly, they weren't sending him a message from their home unless they're all filthy rich loaded. The one kid had a Hulk Hogan motorcycle in the background. Everybody else had tons of Hogan merchandise behind them. And maybe that's possible, but it looked like it was more scripted than anything. But the part that I wanted to highlight, and this is the interactive part for you guys, if you find it online, he put out a request. He asked the fans, he said, what do you want me to do with this wrestling business? He feels like he's back to being in the peak prime condition. For those who don't know, Hulk Hogan had severe back issues, hip issues. He had hip replacement surgery. He had knee issues. Everything apparently has been taken care of. And if you watch this Q&A session, he pops the double bicep and stuff like that. He is in phenomenal shape as always. So even at his advanced age, guy's born in 1953, August 10th, 1953. So do the math. Dude's old, in his 60s, but still looking to see if you guys want him to come back. So he gave choices. He said, do you want me to stay away? Do you want me to stay out of the wrestling business? Do you want him to make a return? Or do you want him to come back and thoroughly tear the business apart? It's interesting that he would even ask that question. And I almost feel like, for those who don't remember, a few months ago, there was speculation that Hulk Hogan was, going to be brought back in time for WrestleMania. And then when that didn't happen, the news broke that the offer to come back was not because it wasn't canceled because WWE didn't want him, but that it was in Hulk Hogan's court to make it happen, and that at the time he wasn't interested in coming back. But now it sounds like he is starting to listen to the fans a little bit, and he realizes, some people say he realizes how much they want him back and he wants to come back. The theory from other people is Hulk Hogan's always been about the money, and he's been away so long that now he's realizing there's so much buzz about him coming back that he might be able to make a huge payday coming back. I don't personally care what his motivation is. Hulk Hogan is the icon, not an icon. He is the icon of pro wrestling. We could debate till we're blue in the face who the best wrestler in the history of wrestling is. Okay? I'm not going to go there because that's completely arbitrary. What I'm talking about is biggest impact on the sport. And what I mean by that is, prior to Hulkamania, you could sell out the Garden with Bruno Sammartino or Bob Backlund or people like that. But that was it. You could sell out some arenas. The NWA, Ric Flair and all those, they could sell out the southern cities, the Greensboro, Charlotte, those places. You could sell out those venues. But once you got outside the wrestling crowd, you didn't really hear a lot about pro wrestling. Hulk Hogan walked through the door and the entire world took notice. MTV got involved. The A-Team brought him on and put him on a few episodes prior to his WrestleMania match teaming with Mr. T. Like, all these things started taking place. The David Letterman and all that kind of stuff. That was all happening because Hulk Hogan transcended wrestling for the first time in the way that he did, and it made it so, in my personal opinion, and again, it's just my opinion, he's the most influential wrestler in history. I didn't say best, I didn't say nicest, I didn't say smartest, best moveset, had the best matches, anything of the sort. His impact on the sport, especially from an exposure standpoint, is unparalleled by anyone, even Stone Cold Steve Austin. Because yes, Steve Austin has transcended now, and The Rock has transcended now, but I would argue for The Rock, in his case, the amazing set of movies that he's put together has done more for the awareness of wrestling, and his ability to act has done more than anything. I don't think it's because The Rock was a wrestler and suddenly got famous. It was because he went to movie stars, made movies, and it made wrestling famous. I get that. Hulk Hogan did it while he was still wrestling. He didn't go outside till much later in his career with Suburban Commando and No Holds Barred, okay? And that wasn't until like 1989. He had a nice 6-year stretch before he did anything outside. So yeah, if you get a chance, look up his page and send him your comments. If you want him to come back, tell him. If you want him to stay away, tell him. I honestly don't care either way because we have enough stars, but I would love to see him on WWE programming. I think he deserves to be there. Speaking of WWE programming, big news broke this morning that JBL is stepping down from his announcing duties on SmackDown. He's going to be leaving the show. He's going to focus his energies on his outside projects. He does a lot of charity work, great for JBL. I'm very happy for him. He did make it clear that he will still be at some of their bigger events, the Tribute to the Troops shows, WrestleManias, Royal Rumbles, things of that nature, which is good because it's nice to see him on television every now and again. But his weekly duties are no more. He's going to be taking a step back and stepping away. But he did get a nice shout out from WWE online on Twitter, telling him that they were thrilled that he was going to maintain his 20-year relationship with the company and continue contributing in some way. A few weeks ago, we talked about Sami Zayn. He had a crowdfunding program out there trying to put together a mobile clinic for the refugees in Syria. For those who don't know, Sami Zayn's parents were Syrian refugees who came to Canada. And so he was trying very hard to contribute. And he wanted to get $25,000. Kevin Owens was a huge contributor in getting that taken care of. And now it's actually set up. So Sami Zayn's clinic went live yesterday, and they're already servicing Syrian refugees. It's a very cool thing. Congratulations to Sami Zayn on doing something that really is making an impact. It's really touching the world in a great way. I don't know if you guys are hearing it, but I'm getting a ton of feedback, and I cannot figure out why. So I apologize if you're getting a buzzing or a humming at the background. I'm trying everything I can to try to eliminate that, but I just thought I'd say that real quick. For those who are really into the independents, last night was Pro Wrestling Guerrilla's Battle for Los Angeles tournament night number 1. For those who don't know, this is a great tournament on the independent scene. It usually attracts some of the greatest singles wrestlers from all the independent scene. Last night they had some first round matches, and they capped it off with a tag team match, which when you listen to the podcast interview with Donovan Dijak, you'll hear him referencing his appearance coming up with Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. That's because we recorded this on Monday and he was wrestling last night. So it's the only thing that kind of sucks is when he talks about that in that interview, remember that the match already took place. But he actually Donovan Dijak teamed up with Keith Lee, and they took on Jeff Cobb and Matt Riddle and had a great match. Matt Riddle and Jeff Cobb come out as the winners. Donovan Dijak's work as a big guy is just fantastic. And if he truly is becoming a WWE talent, I think it's a huge get for their program. The rest of the show, the first round, was just jam-packed. Desmond Xavier defeated Brian Cage. Marty Scurll from Ring of Honor defeated Morgan Webster. Ray Phoenix from Lucha Underground defeated Ray Horace. Penta L0M, which is the stupid name that he has to use on the independent scene because AAA owns the other name for Lucha Underground. He defeats Matt Sydal. Zack Sabre Jr. defeats Jonah Rock, and Ricochet defeated Flamita. So going into the next round, I fully expect they're going to book a Zack Sabre Jr. Ricochet match. If not, I would expect Ricochet to take on Marty Scurll. I have not gotten to see the tournament bracket to see who goes against who, but that just seems like a dream match waiting to happen, especially the Ricochet Zack Sabre Jr. match. I think that would really lend some credibility to their show. So the next night for Battle of Los Angeles will be taking place shortly and should offer some just killer results. I mean, their shows, if you've never seen a Pro Wrestling Guerrilla show, by all means, check them out, tune in. As a matter of fact, as we're talking, I just got the match card for tonight's Battle of Los Angeles. So there's more first round matches happening later tonight in Reseda, California. Joey Janela will be taking on TK Cooper. Donovan Dijak is in the tournament taking on Trevor Lee. Jeff Cobb takes on Sami Callihan. Matt Riddle takes on Michael Elgin. Mark Haskins versus Travis Banks. Keith Lee versus Walter. And they will have a tag team match tonight. Matt Sydal and Ricochet will take on the leaders of the new school, Marty Scurll and Zack Sabre Jr., and there will be a 6-man tag team match. Flamita, Penta L0M, and Ray Phoenix will take on the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega. I actually would love to see that match. I will have those results hopefully for the next episode, but that is the lineup for tonight's Pro Wrestling Guerrilla Battle of Los Angeles Night 2. That'll be taking place. It should be starting in roughly an hour and a half Pacific time. Moving on from there, Darren Young, been out of action for months and months now. He made his triumphant return at a house show in a battle royal to determine who would face The Miz later that night for the Intercontinental Championship. He did not win. The battle royal was won by Jason Jordan, who then went on to lose to The Miz later in the show. But it's nice to see they've got Darren Young doing some ring work, so now they just need creative to come up with something for him to do so they can get him on television. But I fully expect him to become a member of, Titus Worldwide as soon as he gets back. Global Wrestling Network. So we've already got the WWE Network. We've got New Japan Pro Wrestling has their network. Now, Global Force Wrestling, GFW, Impact Wrestling, TNA, all that video library is about to be coming to their own wrestling network, launching later in September. Should be interesting to see how they present their product. They've been working on this for quite some time, but I don't have pricing available yet. I think they should be publicizing that as soon as possible so people can start to plan for whether they want that or not. But in the short term, a lot of their pay-per-view level shows they've been putting on television for free. And rather than do that, this will give them a reason for people to tune in and purchase the product. Unlike WWE, where they have all these, your first month free and nonsense. People create multiple accounts, get the free month, and then turn it off. That's why they're having subscriber count issues right now. This offers Global Force Wrestling an interesting revenue stream and a way for those of us who've been watching Impact Wrestling since its beginning to go back and relive some of the coolest moments in Impact Wrestling history. Speaking of Impact Wrestling former stars and current WWE superstar Samoa Joe has a knee injury. So this past Monday, he was scheduled to take on John Cena for the first time ever on a WWE show. I say it like that because when they both were wrestling before their careers took off, they wrestled and had a huge feud for UPW, which you can actually look up and find on YouTube. But this was going to be Samoa Joe and John Cena on Monday Night Raw. Joe was absent from the show. Turns out he was hurt at a house show prior to Monday Night Raw, so things had to be changed up. It actually shifted. Some people are saying that John Cena versus Roman Reigns was planned all along. Other people are saying it was originally supposed to be John Cena and Samoa Joe. Roman Reigns was going to unite with the Shield to take on the Miztourage, but I guess none of that matters anymore because we're going to be seeing Cena and Reigns now after that killer promo on Monday night. If you have not listened to that, go onto YouTube and watch it, or go to the network, or wherever you got to go. Great stuff. The only problem is, if you go to the network and rewatch Raw, they've edited out the best part of the argument. The part where Roman Reigns is forgetting his words and John Cena totally improvises and shoots on him and says, "It's called a promo, kid. If you want to be the big dog, you got to learn how to do them." They cut that line out on WWE.com because they don't want people to realize that was actually a shoot. So if you want to see the unedited version, you're going to have to go to YouTube. But yeah, Samoa Joe scheduled to be out 4 to 6 weeks. After that, we'll have to see how they work him into the storylines. There was a little piece of me who was kind of hoping he would get involved in the Braun Strowman, Brock Lesnar match, but I don't think that's going to happen. Triple H, doing another interview, spoke about the prospects of doing a Roman Reigns heel turn. And here's the thing. He made it clear that he's not planning on ever turning Roman Reigns heel. And a lot of people immediately, when you hear that, they cringe. But here's the truth. And his opinion, I had to think about it for a minute. But he's actually relatively accurate. He said that there are the fans who boo Roman Reigns out of the building. And to them, he's already a heel. And then there's the other segment of the audience that cheers him vehemently, thoroughly supports Roman Reigns. And for them, if you were to flip him heel, exclusively heel, the people who wanted them to be heel won't be satisfied and now they'll cheer for him. And the people who were all about him being a babyface, you flip him heel, they're going to get mad at him. So you're just going to 50-50 the audience no matter what you do with the guy. He really is a shade of gray wrestler. John Cena is to a degree, but I think at the end of the day, a lot of the people who boo John Cena do it for the interactiveness at the shows and to be funny. And I'm not saying there's not a segment of the audience that thinks he's got a limited move set and everything else. I believe that. But I think real wrestling fans understand that John Cena really is the face of that company and has been for a long time. And just like every major star before him, he calls a lot of his own shots because he's earned that right. Ric Flair was the head booker for WCW when he was world champion. Hulk Hogan had creative control that got him a bad rap. Bret Hart, you name it. The list goes on and on. People who had creative input into their characters and who change the trajectory of the championships and everything else. So Roman Reigns really isn't at that level yet. John Cena is. And my understanding is John Cena was heavily in on the writing of the promo. So even the stuff where he was digging on himself was coming from his own mouth, which is extraordinarily interesting to me. John Jones, I know this is not a UFC podcast, but I'm going to put this out there because it has ties to wrestling, and that is the news broke today that John Jones did not have steroids in his body during his fight at UFC, 216 against Daniel Cormier. So he is not going to be stripped of his championship. He is clear. The U.S. Anti-Doping Association has cleared John Jones. He is not a failed drug test. There was an errant test. What essentially it broke down to is they typically do a urine test and not a blood test for the particular thing that he came up as failing for. The issue is the urine test is not always overly accurate. The U.S. Anti-Doping Association made it very clear that the people should not have jumped to conclusions because after they get a failed test in a urine sample for that particular substance, they have to do a blood test because that's the only way to know for sure. They do the blood test and he came back clean, which means he was not the cheater that everybody claimed that he was. This opens the doors to him being able to have that UFC mega fight with Brock Lesnar next summer if Brock Lesnar gets back into the testing protocol. If nothing else works out and Brock decides to come back to wrestling, I think that John Jones would be now a more legitimate fit to come to WWE and do a wrestling match program with Brock Lesnar. So either way, I think this is good news for fans who want to see John Jones versus Brock Lesnar. At some point, I think now that may actually happen. Things that won't happen, or at least no time anywhere near in the near future. Kazuchika Okada was doing an interview this week, and he made it clear his opinion on a WWE run is that he does not anticipate doing that anytime soon. He pays very close attention to what AJ Styles and Shinsuke Nakamura and those types of people do, but he does not want to go there. He wants to go and stay with New Japan Pro Wrestling. However, he does still want to have another high-profile match with AJ Styles and people of that sort. And so it may come down to where he has to go to WWE to make that happen. I don't know if that will happen, but he has been a guest behind the scenes several times for WWE. So it would not shock me in any stretch if he were to end up there. Edge had an interview this week on one of the podcasts, and he was talking very specifically about the advice that he would give young talent trying to make it in WWE, making it clear that the biggest thing that they could do to better their careers is to make a personal relationship with Vince McMahon. That Vince McMahon, when he sees you, when you communicate with him, you build a bond with him, he then feels like he can get behind you and create a brand around you. And I thought this is like interesting advice because, Vince McMahon is known for being this big puffed up Neanderthal. And the reality is Edge is always been one of these people who's been very straightforward about the wrestling business. And if he's telling you that Vince is open to having that relationship with you and that that's the best thing you can do for your position, absolutely do that. It's surprising to me sometimes some of the talents that are just so over who don't make it very far. And then you hear something like this and you got to wonder, did they ever make the overture to really establish a relationship with Vince McMahon? And if they haven't, would having a relationship like that have resulted in a better position on the card for them? I don't know what the answer to that question is, but it's definitely something to consider. X-Pac has been doing a ton on his podcast and others, and one of the topics that came up was the 205 Live show and the WWE Cruiserweight Championship. They spoke about Enzo and what's been going on with him, and it turns out somebody posed a question to him, would he ever consider a return to WWE for one last run at the Cruiserweight Championship? And he said, absolutely not. That's not going to happen. He said not that he wouldn't come back for, some appearances and whatnot, but he can't see himself having another run. That's kind of a shame because even though I know he's a little bit older talent, I say a little bit, he's like getting ready to be in his 50s, but the reality is he's still talented enough and has enough in-ring presence. He could really go with some of these guys on a 205 roster, and he would add that veteran presence that I think the roster really lacks, because a lot of these guys, people just don't know them. I mean, they're starting to know them now, but let's face it, before the 205 Live show got started, how many people knew who Grand Metalik was? How many people really paid attention to TJ Perkins? You loved him when he played Suicide. You know, that was cool. But you didn't really pay much attention to TJ Perkins, Rich Swann. These guys were, some of them, indie guys who got a break here and there. And now they have this forum where they can put out this great product, but they aren't. Because people aren't tuning in. Like, last week there was videos of people leaving the arena prior to the end of 205 Live, and I thought it was like, wow, like, this is so disrespectful to the talents that you paid good money to come see. But you can't blame the fans when they haven't been given no reason to tune into the product. And, you know, my concern is Vince McMahon at some point is going to be like, you know what, this isn't worth the production value we're putting behind it. Let's just end this division. And I don't want to see that either, because it's a great place for smaller talents to go and really get over, really establish a great following. Going to move on to the AAW Defining Moment 2017 show. Took place last night. Really solid show. I spoke earlier about Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. Guerrilla is a great, great company. They have tons of great stars. And I'm always impressed with everything they do. AAW is very similar. AAW puts out great shows. Cody was on the card. Various other talents. A lot of the guys who were at Pro Wrestling Guerrilla show were at that show the night before. And the main event of the evening was a championship versus mask main event for the AAW Championship between the current champion, Sami Callihan, and the challenger, Ray Phoenix from Lucha Underground. Phoenix ends up winning the AAW World Heavyweight Championship in what is being described as like match of the year candidate. And Sami Callihan kind of, in a way, breaking character, showing the respect and raising Phoenix's hand and turning the belt over to him after the match was just a really awesome moment. Pentagon Jr. or Penta Zero M Dark, whatever you want to call him. I'm going to call him Pentagon Jr. because that's what I usually know him as. He came out and celebrated with Phoenix. It was a really emotional moment for them. What a great show, you know? So if you have never seen AAW wrestling, I've given you guys suggestions in the past about companies to tune into. That would be one of them. When I post the podcast interview with Donovan Dijak, he's a very big fan of AAW because they have so much interesting programming. The last tidbit I want to get to tonight is Chikara. So Chikara is based out of Philadelphia, right near my hometown, and they always run this King of Trios tournament, and it just kicked off. The King of Trios round 1. So for those who don't know, that's 6-man tag team matches. A lot of the names on the card you would, unless you were an insane junkie like I am, you probably wouldn't even know. I'll give you an example. The first match in the Trios tournament was House Calamari, is the name of the team, which was comprised of Chris Brooks, Kid Lycos, and Elijah. They defeated the House Bike Cops, comprised of Officer Warren Barksdale, Donald Kluger, and Jasper Tippins. If any of my listeners have heard of any of those names, you've already impressed me beyond belief. What I want to point out here is that they typically try to bring in one just stellar team, one over-the-top, really over team that really brings brand name recognition. And I found it to be just amazing display of respect for the WWE UK product, because the number one team, in my opinion, in this tournament is House Strong Style. You'll notice all the teams have the word house at the beginning. House Strong Style is comprised of the WWE United Kingdom champion Pete Dunne, Trent Seven, and Tyler Bate. They won their first round match against House White Wolf, made up of Zayas, A-Kid, and Adam Chase. Again, 3 guys that most people probably don't know. There was plenty of other excitement going on in the first round. They had Casa Dorada with the Chikara Grand Champion Juan Francisco de Coronado, his team being victorious. They have all these other stars that they have cultivated at the Wrestle Factory, and also on the card, Simon Grimm, formerly Simon Gotch, was there. His team won their first round matchup. So just a few names there that have real brand name recognition. A big kudos to the WWE UK talents. But if you've never seen, that's another thing. I like, YouTube owes me so much money for pushing people to go to their channels, because you really can find some amazing stuff from Chikara. A little bit more cartoonish. They have a lot of masks, a lot of I'm gonna say simulated lucha libre, because, you know, it's not Mexican wrestling, but a lot of them dress like they are. But it's still a decent product. For those who I've been asking, I got several questions this week about the live shows that I go to. September 9th and 23rd will be episodes that I will do live on Saturday nights from the Worldwide Wrestling Alliance. The 9th will be from Zern's Farmers Market in Gilbertsville, Pennsylvania, and the one on the 23rd will be from the Quakertown Farmers Market in Quakertown, Pennsylvania. Both shows should be fantastic. The last show that they had last weekend was out of this world. All matches are now online. You can actually find those, and I encourage you, if you have not seen their product before, look up Ken Andrews versus, what is his name? Leo Sweet for the WWWA World Championship. It was a good match, kind of a schmaz ending at the end. I really didn't like the way they booked the ending, but the match itself was pretty solid. Ken Andrews and Leo Sweet are two guys who I would firmly believe could make it on a WWE roster. Ken Andrews is their world champion. Leo Sweet is their high impact champion, kind of like their cruiserweight champion, but they're both really, really talented. So I wish them nothing but great success in their future wrestling opportunities, because they are both worth it. So check that out if you get the opportunity. Please don't forget, give us questions, comments, concerns, anything you want us to cover throughout the week by calling into the Fro Wrestling Sound Off line at 267-642-1160. We'd love to hear from you guys. If you want to become a Patreon member of the Fro Wrestling Podcast, we would love to have you. The Patreon members really are a huge factor in our future being able to bring in better equipment and things of that nature to try to bring you a better show. We would love to have you, so by all means, shoot over to patreon.com/Fro Wrestling Podcast and sign up today. That's all the time I have for this episode. Check back with me in the next episode. We will try to get that interview out to you as soon as humanly possible, so you guys can hear all the conversation with Donovan Dijak. I tried to grill him on the WWE topic and his experiences with Ring of Honor and other places. Check that out later this week. Special thanks, as always, goes out to bensound.com and purpleplanet.com. They produce all the music, all the sound effects that I use in our shows. As a matter of fact, I just got some communication from them. There's some new music they think I might like. I'm going to check that out this week and see if we want to incorporate that in some way. And we'll see how that rolls out. Today's podcast, as always, sponsored by Beazle Games. Bringing a new friend to family game night is easy with sketchy people. Showcase your artistic side in this new game from Beazle Games by going to frowrestling.com and clicking the icon in the middle of the screen. It is a killer game, fun for the whole family. And alleyrepair.com. Contact Alley Repair today for servicing of all your classic skee ball, pinball, and arcade game needs. Be sure to shoot over to our website if you are looking at colleges, universities, or you just want to make a switch of career. You want to try something else and you need some training to make that happen, and higher education is the place to get it. Contact frolifeplanning.com. We help out with all that stuff, whether it's finding a program that fits you the right way, whether it's finding an institution that's going to allow for your schedule, whatever your needs are, financial aid, things like that. We help with those things at Fro Life Educational Planning. Remember, Fro Life Educational Planning is for today, for tomorrow, and for life with Fro Life. I'm Fred Froelich, better known as Mr. Fro. I want to thank you, as always, my amazing audience, for tuning in for this episode of Going Live at 9:05. And if you want to check out even more news, rumors, articles, go to thesportsjunkies101.com. That's THA, thesportsjunkies101.com for the latest articles on the world of professional wrestling. Until next episode, take care, everybody, and have a wonderful, wonderful holiday weekend.